Hello friends, welcome to Coding Garden. In this video, I am going to be completing the State of JS 2022 survey. Now, I don't know how much longer it's going to be active, so if you want to take it, link is in the description. Take it right now because it actually might not be that active that much longer. And every year they release this survey. It essentially gets a survey of what do people use, how often do they use it, do they like it, do they not like it, that kind of thing. So we're going to take the survey. I'm going to be completely honest about things I know and that I don't know, and we'll get right into it. Here we go. For the first time in a while, it feels like the status quo of the JavaScript ecosystem is being questioned. Faster bundling with Vite, island architecture with Astro, resumability with Quick, new entrants are challenging the old guard, and the result is a lot more excitement, but also a lot more uncertainty. It's always been this way. Like every year there's something new. Like I guess last year or the year before, wasn't it Parcel instead of Vite? And then like Webpack 0 config. It's always this way. Don't make this sound like it's anywhere, like it's more now than it ever was. It's always been this way. So once more, let's try and figure out together where JavaScript is going in 2022 and beyond. Here we go. All right, yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, so if I zoom out, you'll see there's a lot of sections. But I'm gonna do my best. We're just gonna go one at a time, one question at a time, and here we go. Language, the vocabulary of JavaScript. Welcome to the survey. The first part is all about figuring out what features of the JavaScript language you know about. And if you know about something but haven't used it, that's fine too. Proxies. I know what it is, and I've used it. Shout out to old CJ that did a talk on building an MVC app from scratch. And I used proxies so that way we could have real-time updating data without having to do anything like set state or anything like that. We could literally set a property on the object, and then the view would instantly know that and could automatically update. So that's what proxies are, and the latest version of Vue uses proxies now. They used to use object.define property, but now they use proxies, which is why Vue 3 doesn't support older browsers that don't have proxy support. So those are cool. Promise.all settled. I've used it, so this is similar to promise.all, but promise.all will throw an exception and break out if one of your promises throws an exception or would potentially go to the catch, whereas all settled waits for all of them to complete. Proxies are great. And now proxies is a general computer science term, but specifically in the JavaScript language, there is a capital P proxy object that gives you this feature. So you can define an object, pass it into a proxy, and then now the thing you get back can be alerted when things happen to it. Like if a property changes or if a property is accessed, you can get access to those things. So if they have the methods that we can, so they have different traps that you can tap into. So you have a set trap. So this is the one that we would use if we want to detect if something has changed. We can pass a function to the set trap, and anytime someone tries to change a property on that object, this function is going to run. So it's like an interceptor. That's another term for proxy. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right. Dynamic import. Yeah, I've used it in when you generate a Vue app, it has an example of this where basically instead of importing everything at the top of your file, you can import at a later time. And so this will let you do that. Nullish coalescing. I've used it because people told me to use it on stream. Typically, I use like the OR operator, but this I think specifically has to do with them. I can't even explain. I've used it before, but honestly, for me, it's just a replacement for the OR operator. Okay. So it's the OR operator thingy, but only for null. So if the thing on the left-hand side has an actual value, then you're gonna get that. Let's actually test this out because I'm curious what it would do with undefined. So, and then if we look at foo, it is default string. Yeah, so it seems like it's potentially more predictable. I'm going to do this so that I can overwrite the variables. And then thing is 0. But what about undefined? Thing is default string. Okay, so the nullish coalesce works for null and undefined, but not for falsy values. I think that's the main difference. That is the main difference between nullish coalescing and the OR operator. It's in the name, nullish coalescing. So basically, if I use the OR operator, then things that are falsy, it doesn't catch. So in this case, thing actually would be default string instead of false. So that's cool. That's cool. But honestly, a lot of times I'll just use OR because I actually most of the time I want it to include falsy values, but. Yeah, okay. Private fields, we've used it, and we've talked about how we don't really like the syntax, but yeah, you can do private fields in JavaScript now. Numeric separators, yep, it's the underscore. So when you have a big long number in your code, like 9 million, you can actually write it like this, and then JavaScript will just strip those away, but you can make your code potentially more readable. So that's the thing. String.prototype.replace all. Yeah, this was a cool addition because string.replace. So if I say replace L's with banana, you see that replace only replaces the first occurrence. And if we wanted replace to replace all occurrences, then we'd have to add a regular expression with the global matcher to replace both L's. But now that we have replace all, we don't have to use regular expressions anymore. We can just say that, and then it'll replace all occurrences with the thing instead of just the first occurrence. So that's pretty cool. Logical assignment. Yeah, I never use it. I don't like how this looks, but it really is. It's kind of just the same thing as value equals thing or other thing. Right, because it already had the value 50. Yeah, so I've used it. I don't like it, but I've used it. Promise.any, so yeah, that'll resolve after, you can pass an array just like promise.all, but it will resolve if any of them resolve, and then it will move on after any of them have resolved. So you could have like, it's almost like a race condition. You fire off 3 promises, the first one that resolves, you get that value. I'm beginning to like .at more and more on arrays. So this was added to arrays. So if I have an array that's like A, B, and C, .at, initially, it works very similar to like bracket notation, right? Great. Where it's really useful is if you want to get the last value in an array. Code golfers everywhere are rejoicing because I can do this and get the last value in the array. Whereas before, you typically would have to do like length -1 and not at, you'd use bracket notation. And of course, you'd have to get the length. This is an inline example, but this is where this is more and more useful, is if you're trying to get the last thing in an array, the .at is really useful. Top level await, yeah, we use this a lot in Dino, so we can, basically you can have async functions that, async modules basically that don't have to have your async code inside of a function. Yeah. The temporal API, yeah, we used it the other day to format. No, I guess we formatted currency the other day. Actually, that reminds me, we should go to the advent of birds and collect our birds for the past few days. So this is a thing we built on Coding Improv last week, and it gives you an advent calendar. And what I was thinking of is this. So this is the international formatting API, but it let us do currency, so we use that. Temporal, I do believe, is the one that lets you format dates, and you can also do like relative time, so like time since, that kind of thing. Yeah, no, I know it's not this. This is what I was thinking of, though. That's what I was thinking of. Why is it not on MDN? I spelled it wrong. They just don't have it. But it can give you like relative times and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. Array.findLast. I haven't used it. It's basically a find that goes in reverse. So that's cool. But I have not used that. So there we go. I don't have 100% on this. It says this was released in 2022. I feel like I went over ECMAScript 2022. I didn't see this on the feature list. Oh, we looked at 2021, not 2022. Yeah, so there are only 2 features made it into ES 2022. Is that what we're seeing here? Oh no, they're going to make it into 2023. This is wrong. This is wrong, man. Error.prototype.cause. Yeah, we used it. Basically, it's almost like the inner exception in like Java and C#, but now you can pass it in as the cause of an error. We've used this and we've talked about why it's better than other things. I guess I have to stop showing examples of everything, or we'll be here forever. So, regex match indices. Oh yeah, we did use it, and then I couldn't figure out the API. Anybody? So I say we because we've used these things specifically on stream. A lot of times people will tell me about them. I'm like, oh yeah, let's try it out. I remember we were trying to do this, and I was like, I didn't understand the API. Eventually, we got it, but yeah, we have used it. All right, let's keep going. Browser APIs. Service workers. I've used it indirectly, right? So if you generate like a Vue app and you choose progressive web app, it's going to generate a service worker in the back for you that like caches resources. Also, Create React app does that as well. I guess we can be a little hand wavy about like, have I really used it? I mean, I've deleted the file that created a service worker, so sure. We've used the Intel API. This is what I was talking about earlier for currency formatting. I mean, I haven't written WebGL code directly, but I've used 3JS, which uses WebGL under the hood. You can use some really cool stuff with 3JS. Web animations. What do they mean by this? I don't even know what they mean by web animations. Is this a specific API? The Web Animations API. Synchronizing and timing changes to the presentation of a web page. Yeah, I've never used it. I guess you can tap into when animations are happening with CSS and stuff like that. Element.animate. Cool. I've never done this with JavaScript because I've only done it with CSS, so that's pretty cool. I didn't know it existed. WebRTC, I've used it, built an app with it. Yep. Web Speech API, we've used this on stream before. You can do like text-to-speech and stuff like that. We've used WebSockets. We've done custom elements, which are web components. Shadow DOM has a lot to do with custom elements and web components. The page visibility API lets you know when someone like tabs away from your app, which is pretty sweet. Broadcast channel, I know what it is. I've never used it. So basic communication between browsing contexts. So yeah, so I've used window.postMessage, but I've never used broadcast channel.postMessage. It seems like they would need to be from like the same domain, right? It has to be on the same browsing context. So yeah, heard of it, never used it. Geolocation, we've used it. File system access API, we've used it. The web share API, we've used it. I've also used it like at my job before this. But basically, like if you're doing this in a website that's running on a mobile web browser, the share API will actually launch the native share API that will let you like share with apps or like copy to clipboard. I've never used WebXR. Does this have anything to do with like augmented reality? Let's see. WebXR is a group of standards which stand together to support rendering 3D scenes to hardware designed for presenting virtual worlds, VR, or for adding graphical imagery to the real world with augmented reality. Cool. I mean, honestly, like I did a demo. That was like, I don't know if it was WebXR. It was the one, because I think Firefox was one of the first browsers to support this. This is probably the API that I use, the WebVR API. Because basically within a web page, you could get data that you could typically only get inside of like a native application. So you could get a position and like gyroscope information about the head-mounted display that a user was wearing. But if anyone remembers Google Cardboard, they had an experiment that used WebVR, I believe. This is a while back, but this was they gave out these cardboard boxes, I believe, at the Google Dev conference, but you could also order them, and basically it was like a little fold device, and you could put your phone into it, and it basically splits the screen down the middle and turns it into like a VR device. But I do believe it used to use WebVR. Now it probably is using WebXR. So I've never used that because I use the older one. Let's keep going. Progressive web apps. I've used it. WebAssembly. Honestly, I haven't ever directly used it. I know what it is. I know some of the things I do will generate WebAssembly, but I've never written WebAssembly myself directly. Okay, the next couple of questions focus on libraries and frameworks that make up the JavaScript ecosystem. Let you know what you're excited about. Do you actually write WebAssembly, or would you use tools that convert the code into WebAssembly? I think that's typically what people would do, right? I don't think I've really even ever done that either. But like, there's like a Emscripten, I think is what it's called, can let you turn C or C++ code into WebAssembly that can run in a web browser. And there are similar things that will convert C# or convert Rust to stuff that runs directly in the web browser. Yeah, people typically aren't writing WebAssembly directly, but even that, I haven't really used those. So React, I've used it, and I would use it again only because it's really popular. So well, I guess we'll get into the section. Well, maybe this is where if I say used it, would not use again, maybe that's better for the metrics, because like I don't like React. I use it because I have to. I use it because the job I worked at used it, and then now I use it because I'm a tech educator and people want to learn React, so that's why I keep using it. But do I like it? No. Like, yeah. So I'll say used it, would use it again. But yeah. Okay, let's keep moving. Vue. Used it, would use it again every day of my life. Vue is awesome. Angular, I've used it. I'd use it again if I needed to. Honestly, my answer for all of these is yeah, I would use it again if the situation arises. As a software engineer that's been doing this for close to 15 years, I know that all of these different things have their uses, and it's not like I'm never going to use them again because I didn't like. I mean, I did kind of say that about React, but it's like React isn't going away. We're going to have to keep using it. So I've used Angular. I would use it again. I've used Preact. I would use it again. I would use Preact over React, especially because they've introduced signals and they're doing like lots of really cool stuff. Like it used to be that Preact was kind of just like the exact same thing as React, but now they're introducing things that are like separating it from React. So if you go in their guide and you look at signals are really cool. I mean, I'm literally telling you that I hate React. Svelte is awesome too. So I've actually used Ember. I probably wouldn't use it again. So like Ember was honestly, I think Ember was like really big inspiration for how Angular works these days. And actually the original Angular CLI was just a fork of the Ember CLI, but Ember is from the same folks that brought you Ruby on Rails, some of the same folks. Hey, what's up, Ryan? Signals are cool. I agree. And signals are in SolidJS as well. Actually, so I think we're at the point of the survey where it's going to ask us about Solid, and I've never used it before. I've watched videos on YouTube, I've looked through the tutorial, but I've never actually built anything with it. So I think we're going to pause the survey and build something with Solid really quick. But Ryan made Solid. That's why he's in the chat. Thanks for being here. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so the Angular CLI was actually a fork of the Ember CLI, and Ember comes from the Ruby on Rails folks. And if you know Ruby on Rails, you know that it's extremely opinionated as a backend framework. Ember is a very similar thing, like tons of opinions. But what that means is like every Ember app you get dropped into behaves the way that you would expect because everything is where it is. I believe LinkedIn was written in Ember. I don't know if that's changed or they've rewritten since then. Who is using Ember.js? A lot of companies. Their tagline was, wasn't it like ambitious web apps or something like that? But honestly, it's from what I'm seeing, it seems like Angular and like the new Angular is kind of like taking over that for like ambitious web apps or like large enterprise apps. I don't know. Svelte, used it, would use it again. Svelte is awesome. Alpine, I've heard of it. Let's look at it really quick to see if I am interested in it. I always forget which one this is. Because there's one, yeah, it's this one. So it's like very HTML focused. Where like everything is done with like data attributes. You have like way less JavaScript. I mean, technically you're going to have a little bit of JavaScript in your props here, but everything is like based on props. I'd like to learn it. Like honestly, I'd like to at least build one app with it to see how I feel with it, because one of the cool things is you just drop the script tag in, right? And then you just start coding. And like that's a very similar feel that I got with Vue.js that I liked early on with Vue. Now, if you're building a full-on Vue app, typically you're going to generate it with the CLI, but it is nice if you have just like a one-off page to drop the Vue CD in and just start coding. This feels like you'd have a similar experience, so it seems like it might be fun for like rapid prototyping. I don't think I'd build like a giant app with this. Yeah, it's kind of like Tailwind for JS. You have all of your JavaScript in the attributes. So I would like to learn it or use it, but I haven't. Yeah, so I've used Lit. I would use it again. So this framework is for building web components. Building web components without this is like really cumbersome, but they give you nice little utilities like this HTML template function where you pass in a template string, but it actually compiles this into like a render function. It has a lot of other utilities for building web components. Timon says Lit is awful in my opinion. It's the only thing I've used that makes, well, I guess, yeah, only thing I've used that makes making web components easier. There is Stencil, but Stencil is more like React-ish. That's probably what they're going to ask us about next. But Stencil is a similar idea. It lets you build web components, but they have JSX, or like you use JSX, so it looks like closer to React. I don't know. Solid. Honestly, let's go build a Solid app so that I can put used it and won't use it again. So let me tell you about my how I first heard about Solid, and I was like immediately sold on it, but I haven't built anything with it yet because I've just been doing other things. But I think I literally just watched the... Wait, is this the Fireship one? Yeah, that's Fireship. I watched the 10-minute one, this advanced intro, and it told me everything I needed to know about. So like I haven't even used Solid, and I already know that I will like it based on this one video. And I mentioned this in the past, but it's actually really cool that the tutorial for a framework comes from the framework itself. So this is from the core team member, Dan. It's one of the first front-end frameworks I've seen that has this aspect to it, right? Because like a lot of other things, like you search YouTube and you find other people that have used it, whereas this is directly from SolidJS themselves, and it's a really good tutorial. Let's watch it. Let's watch at least the first bit of it, and then let's generate a Solid app. Yeah, first-party tutorials, exactly.
Solid is a reactive JavaScript framework. If you're interested in what reactivity is and how it works in Solid, this video is for you. Let's say we have a...
We're going to watch it on 1.5 speed, if that's okay. Oh, no, you didn't, Ryan. I literally... This was my plan because I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, I've talked about Solid. I haven't used it. We're gonna learn it in like under 20 minutes. But we're gonna watch this video at 1.5 speed, and potentially stop watching the video and just go build a thing. Honestly, okay. Let me know in chat. We'll just do like a quick poll. Should we watch the video, or should we just go right to the docs? Vote now. Yes. I mean, honestly, the reason I'll just keep playing this, but the reason I wanted to show it was because, yeah, it's a first-party tutorial. It's a tutorial from the people themselves, and if you already know React, if you've used Vue before, you're going to understand what this thing does.
Relationship. Double count is set to count times 2, and we can go ahead and print that out. But if we change count and print again, the value of double count is still the same. In order for the relationship to hold, we have to restate that relationship. What Solid's reactivity can do for us is maintain that relationship over time, make it into a rule that's always true. Instead of using let, we'll use createSignal, imported from Solid, to create a reactive variable. This gives us two functions, a getter and a setter. We'll call the getter whenever we want to access the value of the variable. This gives us the same result, but signals allow us to tap into Solid's reactivity. Rather than double count being an assignment at a specific point in time, we can write it as a function of our count signal. To show how Solid can maintain this relationship over time, let's update our count signal every second using setInterval, which is built into JavaScript. Here we'll make use of that second function we got from createSignal, the setter function that sets the reactive variable to what we pass. In this case, we set the count to the value of the count plus 1. Instead of just logging double count once, we'll wrap our output using createEffect. An effect is some function that depends on signals. With createEffect, we pass a function, and Solid will keep track of any signals that are used inside the...
So we're 2 minutes into the video, and I was like, this is everything I need to know. First of all, like if you've already used React, if you've already used Is it 50-50? All right, we'll watch just like a couple more minutes of it. Because I mean, you all can give me your first impressions of this. Like, if you use hooks in React, or if you've ever used like even like I guess the composition API in Vue, you look at this code, it makes sense. But the cool thing is we're not inside of a component, right? This is the thing that I think is missing from React, is the fact that hooks and effects and like use state, there's so many rules around where you have to use it. Like, it can't be in a conditional, it has to be at the top, you have to declare your dependencies. This gets rid of all that stuff, and like you can just use them anywhere. You'll notice in the effect we didn't have to add our array of dependencies, it's automatically tracking it. What else? Yeah, I guess technically, like, we do have like this setter function, so it's not like complete. It doesn't have like the mutable API like you would in Vue.js, but we're already used to this if we're using React. I don't know. This just looks really cool to me. Let's watch like another minute, and then we'll build a thing.
Function scope. When any of those change, the effect will rerun. In this case, the count signal is used by double count, which is inside the effect. So whenever count changes, we get another output to the console. This makes reasoning about your code way easier, especially as complexity grows. Let's say we had another signal for a multiplier. Let's change that over time too. We will increment it as well at a different interval. And let's use both of our signals inside the effect to tell the user a mathematical statement. As you can see, whenever either signal changes, the effect reruns. And this system is composable. We can pull relationships out into their own functions. So we can make our code a little bit neater by pulling out the product calculation. We can pass this around and call it within effects, and Solid will always know to look as deep as it needs to find any signals and rerun the effect when those change. To sum up, create signal sets up a value that can be tracked by Solid, and create effect makes sure a function is always up to date when a signal that it depends on is updated. Also, you can use functions to represent relationships between your signals, giving you a powerful way to model your system. Let's take a look at how this works with some pseudocode. At the most basic level, create signal lets us read. Let's create a DOM node using vanilla JavaScript here. We'll create an h1, and we'll give it some placeholder content.
I realized I was muted. I said, let's get into the idea of components, and then we'll jump into the docs. Because this was like state outside of components. This generates code. I mean, I don't know the implementation details of it, but I imagine it's very similar to like React, because it also uses JSX. So there is going to be a build step. But I think the thing that's different is there is no virtual DOM, right? Something I don't think. Yeah, there's no virtual DOM, and it's similar to Svelte in that there's no virtual DOM and it only ships the code that it needs. I don't know if Ryan is still here; he can clarify that, but that's my understanding of it.
Then we will add it to the screen by appending it to the existing appdiv. Sure enough, it shows up. Let's modify our effect so that instead of printing to the console, we update this header. Let's get rid of these set intervals too and add buttons instead. We could write them out using DOM functions, but Solid allows you to write HTML elements directly into your code thanks to JSX. Let's add these to the screen too, using that append call to the appdiv. Now let's make these buttons actually work. We can use the curly brace.
Yeah, and so like it's going to generate the code based on what you wrote, but I do believe no virtual DOM, which is cool.
Syntax to set the click event of each button to a function that increments the appropriate signal. In general, curly braces in JSX allow us to insert a dynamic value. And now we've got a UI working, using Solid's reactive system to stay in sync with the data. But there's certainly still room for improvement. Firstly, this isn't totally optimal. Our effect will replace the entire text content of the header, even if only a small amount of that needed to change, which is costly from a performance perspective. Secondly, even though Solid cut down on how much code we need to maintain our state, we're still writing imperative code here, directly manipulating the DOM. And Solid can make writing UI code much easier using components. In Solid, components are just functions that help us group our UI code and reuse it. Let's start with an app function that will serve as the entry point for our app. We can move our signals inside of it, although we don't necessarily need to. Components in Solid return a DOM node to be rendered, so let's make sure to do that. We can go ahead and move our buttons into this div. I'll go ahead and copy and paste it. And we can remove our old header and create one using JSX. We'll just have some placeholder content for now. To tell Solid that this component is our entry point, we will use this render function that we'll have to import from Solid. It takes a component and a DOM element to mount to. This is the typical setup for Solid. A nice thing about JSX and Solid, whether you do it inside a component or not, is that it lets you use reactive values directly inside of this template. So instead of creating an effect that imperatively modifies the header, we can just interpolate values directly into the header. Behind the scenes, Solid actually...
This is the amazing piece, right? So like if you had this same code in React, each of these functions would potentially need to rerun on every render. Like everything in the render function reruns or gets recreated on a new render. What this is going to show is that each of these is actually like a text node, and it's the only thing that changes when that value changes instead of the whole thing re-rendering, which is another amazing thing about Solid.
Compiles this into effects, but we don't have to worry about this. In fact, Solid optimizes our declarative code. Now, only the text nodes that actually need to be updated will be updated. We call this granular update.
Like, it's, to me, it's baffling that React never worked this way, but it's like, this is the React that people want. This is why I think Solid is like the next big thing, because all the people that are already writing React can just jump over to Solid, and then your apps will instantly be faster. I mean, there's going to be like a little bit of a migration, but that's how I see it.
And it's enabled by Solid.
All right, let's build an app. Now, in the past, I have done what I called the front-end showdown, where we build the same app multiple different ways. So yeah, we did one in 2018 where I did it in vanilla, React, Angular 6, and Vue. And then we did another one in 2020 where I did it in vanilla, React, Angular, Vue, and Svelte. So I'm going to rebuild this exact same app now, but just with Solid instead. No, exactly, Killer. Yeah, I think that's actually is a good point to make that I kind of glossed over, is technically when the VDOM thing happens, it's only going to update that one specific node. But where it's different is that React needs to rerun that entire render function, whereas Solid only reruns the little functions that changed. But we can see the app that we built with React. I think we put it all into one component. Yeah, basically we're just going to rebuild this with Solid. And do I have these deployed anywhere? Because it's like a super basic image search website. We're in the docs. Let's get started. Do they have a they have a dgit? I wonder, does this use Vite, or does Vite have a Solid option? They don't yet. I imagine maybe we'll get there, but here we go. This template.js, and then my app is going to be called image search. Great, we'll go in there, install dependencies, and then run it. I guess, should we have used TypeScript? I guess not. Let's see what we get. Oh, it is using Vite. That's cool. There we go. We've got ourselves a Solid app. Easy. Now, can we take what I learned in that video and then just do it? No, the survey isn't completed. We're at the point where it asks us if we knew Solid and if we would use it again. And I want to say yes, so we're going to learn it right now. Okay, got our entry point. Honestly, like if you're a React dev, all of this looks super similar. And I guess it used PNPM by default. Oh, maybe it generated that lock automatically. I'm busy lying. Come on. But yeah, like if you've ever done React, this looks, you know exactly what this is doing. And if we look at app.jsx, easy. All right, so I'm gonna use what I know about React and what I just learned about signals to build this thing. I do like that it comes with CSS modules by default. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, that's great. Though I mean, I am just gonna have some global styles. I don't necessarily need CSS modules, but I do like that they generate it with CSS modules to show people that it's possible. All right, we've got the body code, easy. I think I'm just gonna add Pico CSS. We've been using this all the time. This is just gonna give us some basic styles, so we don't have to worry about styles. So I'm gonna add this CSS Pico to our HTML right here, and then there we go. We have an app that says hello world, and we can rip out all the other styles that we're not using, and also the logo. We're gonna get rid of everything we don't need. So get rid of that CSS, the HTML. We don't want to reference that favicon anymore. Done. Okay. Now, first thing, so we're building an image search app, and the first thing that we need is a search box. So I'm going to have a form, And inside that form, I'll have an input and a label. So this will say search. We'll give this label a for property. I hesitated because I like, do I need HTML4? I'm just going to do for. And we're going to call this search. And then my input will have an ID of search and a name of search. Let's see what we get. There we go. So we've got a nice little form there. And I think if we give this a class of container. Also, do I need class versus class name? I'm curious. Tutorial? I guess I could have looked in the generated code. Did it use class or class name? Style. Class list? Class. Okay, yeah, we just need class. So I assume because we can use class, we can also just use for instead of HTML4. Thank you, Ryan. It's like, yeah, but it looks like it's fine. Okay, so we've got this search here. I want to type like mountains, and then we're going to hit an API to search for mountains. So for this, we're going to need a signal. Let's see if I can get an auto import. Create signal. Cool. So that imported that there. Starts off as empty. Now, I guess I probably should go through the tutorial to know, like, is it the canonical thing to do it like you would in React, where you bind the value and then you listen for on change? Because this is typically how you would do it in React. But would we actually just use an uncontrolled input in this case? I don't know. I'm going to do it the React way. People can tell me if this is ridiculous to do it this way. So we're now binding the search value to this input, and then when the input value changes, we need to call set search with event.target.value. And if we've done that correctly, now right here we should have the latest value of search. So native code. What did I do wrong here? Oh, is it search dot like this? Search is a function. And so this also needs to be search. I see. Okay. Or not. Is it need to be like dot current target? Jello. Oh, there it is. Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's on blur. So instead of on change, I actually want on input if I want it to be on every single key press. Jello. Okay, we've done it. We're solid developers. But yeah, it's one of the major differences between like this and React. Like this is a getter, so we need a function to get the value instead of just directly referencing the value. I'm okay with that. Like the code looks a little bit busier, but I'm okay with that. Also, I probably would format it this way. Cool. So we're binding the input. Now we can use that value to make an API request. Okay, so we got this set up. We got user input and DOM event. So just like in React, if you want to tap into a DOM event, you do that. I think the other thing we would want is like a form submitted event. So I could say like on submit, and then pass in a function form submitted, and then we could have a function up here that does the business. Form submitted is a function that will run. It's going to get the event. We can prevent the default action. And in this case, let's just log the value of search like this. So now if I tap enter, the submit function runs, and then we get it logged out. So that's good. Okay, what else do we want to do? Retrieve the search term from the input when the form is submitted. We have done these two things. Conditional rendering. Show a loading image when the form is submitted. Okay, so we need some more state. We're going to have another state called loading and set loading. This starts off as false, and then whenever we submit the form, eventually we're going to be making an API request, so I want to set loading to true. We'll do the API request stuff, and then we'll set loading to false. Like that. Great. And then we'll actually use loading in the UI. So conditional rendering, just like React. So if loading is true, show a thing. I guess we can use this operator. So in this case, I want to show like a loading image. Let me grab that from this repo. We have like a loading image we used for everything. This one. So the only difference here between this and React is that we need to call that getter function. And so if loading is true, we'll show it. So if I search for mountains, now it's showing the loading image. Context and global state. That honestly, like codecs, that's the beautiful thing, right? Check this out. Take these two variables, or sorry, take these two signals and then just put them in a separate file. Like function my global state, right? I guess technically you could return them here. You could do like this, or I guess honestly you could even define these in a module and then like export them. So like export search, and then you could import it elsewhere. So like that's the cool thing about signals is like you don't even need something extra to do like global state. Like everything just works. Okay. We might just need to find another loading image. I don't know why that loading image isn't working. You're right. Let's just save this to a local file. That's gonna simplify our lives. So I'm like, why won't this thing load? Okay, cool. So now in this directory, I have this file. I'm just gonna rename it to loading.gif. And then I should be able to import it in, import the URL. So import loading image from here. And so this is Vite and ESBuild doing this thing. We want loading like this. And so that should give us an asset URL that we can then pass into the source. Like that. Okay. Mountains. There we go. That's what I want to see. So I hit enter, the UI is loading, and then now we can actually like make the API request. So show a loading image when the form is submitted. Great. If you know React, you know this. The only difference here is that we actually have to call the getter function for that value. Next up, we need to actually make an API request. We have a function that calls the API. So this is a little serverless function I wrote that gets images from Reddit. So if I pass in mountains, this gives me back an array of images from Reddit of mountains. So this is where we want to make the request to. Delicious looking mountain. It's not. There's no mountains yet. I'm just gonna do the API request in line. Like this could be a separate function. Like you could have like an API handler, but I'm just gonna do it right here in the form submitted. So we'll get the response from fetch to that URL, but we just want to pass in the current value of search like that. And then that's gonna give us back an array of images. So we need another signal. Let's call this results. That starts off as just an empty array. And then when we make the API request, we're going to get back some JSON. Put it on state. Great. And then set loading to false. We'll do like a little set timeout. So that way it looks like the thing is actually loading. So take a second before setting loading to false. So we've got the results, and then let's just show them in the UI. So here we'll have a div that's going to have all of our results inside of it. And then we basically just need to repeat over results. So results, we get the current value, and then we map over it to give us each image. And And then we just want to return an image element where the source is image.url. Let me just confirm that I have that property right. Image.source. No, image.image. Let's call this result. Result.image is the specific URL of that result. Cool. We'll add a little bit of global CSS. We'll say image has a width of 100%. And then on this div right here, we'll give this a class of results. And then in our CSS, we'll just say results has a column count of 3. Great. Before I show the UI, I'm just gonna finish everything, and then it's all just gonna work. So make the API request with the search term. Great. Render the list of data, same way you would do it in React, except we use the getter. Append the API results to the page. That's kind of what we're doing here. So once we got that API response back, we put it on state, and then we're using it. And then hide the loading image. Good to go. I think the one thing is, if we make another search for a different term, we want to clear out the results. So I'm going to say each time we submit the form, we'll set results back to an empty array. Okay. We should have ourselves a little image search app. Use show in for. Okay, I will. So so this is like, I'm a React developer and I'm just using what I know. I would love some feedback on what's the solid way to do this. Is it broken? It might be broken. Results.map is not a function. Oh, you know what? It's paginated, isn't it? Let's see what we get. Test fail. I just called my API wrong. Result.images is what we want. Yeah, we technically could add pagination, but I'm not going to do that. All right, mountains. Nice. Nice. That's a mountain. That's a mountain. What CSS property am I thinking? Oh, I didn't import this CSS. That's why. I need to import this in my main. Let's import styles.css. Nice. Nice. So there's all our mountains, and then if I search for cacti. Is that how you spell cacti? It's pretty, yeah. Cool. Now I am open to people yelling at me and telling me that I'm not doing this the solid way. So first of all, I didn't know that there was a show and a for in solid. Let me look into that. So what that tells me is instead of having to do this map, there very likely is like a directive similar to Vue that lets us do this. And then similarly, instead of doing like conditional rendering like this, there's something built into solid that makes it easier to do conditional rendering. Let's see. Show. Show when. And then you have a fallback. Oh, that's so cool. Okay. I'm not doing this as solid, but look at this. Okay, so show is built in. Do I have to import it? Yeah, import it from SolidJS. And so show, when loading is true, show this image. And then what if I just leave off fallback? And then also, there's a little bug where like the images start to show up before loading is false. Rivers. Beautiful. Great. Okay, so we're using show. That's awesome. And then for is another one. Ooh, look at that. It's a little, little declarative thing. So we can import for here as well. So the cool thing is, I guess you don't have to use these. I don't know any solid people are here. If you could tell me, like, is there a benefit to using show and for, or ultimately is it just like a map in a conditional render? So I can say each results. This gives me the result and the index. Don't need the index. We just want the result. And then we just want this image. The other cool thing is we don't need keys like we do like we have in React. I would probably write it like this. Instead of the virtual DOM. What else is in nature? Gardens. Yeah. Cool, cool. No need for explicit keys, right? Yeah, so while I have you, Ryan, is there a benefit to using like for and show instead of doing it like the React way with like a map and a conditional render? Oh, it is equivalent. I see. So by using this, it's handling the keys behind the scenes. Is that what you're saying? And then for show, what benefit am I getting there as well? I think this is the one thing that you might like React developers might have an issue adopting. From my experience, React developers really like their maps and they really like their ternaries and like nested conditionals and stuff like that. This actually reminds me of like a little React thing we did one time because we were demonstrating how to build like high order React components. So we built all of these components on stream. So we had like a state component. You could give it some initial state. We had an if component where you could have a condition and a then. And then we also had a for component where you could pass in the array and then the render function. I never used it beyond this, but it was just a fun exercise to build like components that were composing other components. But it is cool that these are built into Solid. Yeah. Show when loading is true. This. Yeah, it's great. This is our app. Look at me. I know Solid. What else could we search for? Deserts. Yeah, what's up, Radeon? We were just building a little image search app here, and the main reason we were doing that is so that we could learn the basics of Solid, so that, in turn, we could say that we've used it and we would use it again. I mean, I had watched a video on it. Oh yeah, time to put it on my resume. I watched a video on Solid, and I've seen some other people talk about it. And me just knowing what I know and like being a React developer, I was like, yeah, all this makes sense. Like I didn't even have to build something with it to know that I would like using it. Yeah. 5 years of Solid experience. It's cool. But yeah, again, to reiterate how crazy this is, let's do this. I can actually define these signals outside of the function. Which also means I could define form submitted outside of the function. And the app should still just work. Let's see what happens. Yeah, the app should still just work. Yes. Yes. That's the beauty there. I'd also give this some margin. And now it's global state. Yeah, so what I was mentioning earlier is, okay, so now take this, put it in a separate module, and then import it into the components that you need. So if you have two different components that are dependent on results, now they're all stored in one place. Yeah. I guess could we use gap? I just put margin there to give some space between the images, but I think gap would need to go here. I don't know if that's compatible. Yeah, it's not compatible. So column count is a weird one. Column count is not actually CSS grid. It's like this old thing, and it flows this way. So it goes down and then back up. Whereas if you did CSS grid, all of your columns would have to be the same height. Would it be global or still encapsulated in the module? I mean, technically these variables are still just in the module, so like it's module state. But I think what we were saying here is like, let's extract it and export it. So now I have a state file. I mean, honestly, we could call this provider, I guess, if you want to use the React terminology. And then we pull all of these things into there, or I don't know, we'll just pull these three. So we'll have these, and then I'm going to export an object. I mean, I guess I could do, can I do named exports like this? Is this go? I've never done this. This syntax seems like it's going to work. I've never used this syntax to export from a destructured array. Would that work? Let's see if it works. So now over here, I'm going to import all of those things from provider. Yeah, it looks like it has all of it. So set loading, set results, set search, and then we have search, loading, and results. So I've basically just taken those things, defined it in a module, and now I can actually import these in any other component, and they all they now share that state. So it still works. So yeah. Yeah, and so so I have to look more into Solid, but what Ryan is saying is they also have a store, and this is probably a better version of what I just did. So like instead of pulling it all out into a module, you can create a store and then bring that into different components. Nested reactivity. Yeah. Cool. Okay, I'm done with Solid, but it's actually really cool. And thank you for hanging out, Ryan. That was really fun to do. But now I can say yes, I've used it, and I would use it again. Okay, let's keep working on the survey here. Okay, Quick. I've heard of it, and I'd like to learn it. So Quick is from Miško Hevry, one of the original creators of Angular. But he started working on Quick. And what's cool about Quick is it basically loads tiny little pieces of JavaScript as they are needed. So like the initial page render doesn't have any JavaScript that it doesn't need yet. And then if you have like a click handler on a button, the moment someone mouses over that button, it instantly downloads the JavaScript that it needs. Quick is super interesting. Now, the thing about me and the kind of apps that I write is like I write just a lot of client-side rendered apps that talk to APIs. That's mostly what I do. Like I haven't fully shifted into doing everything with Next.js. I feel like 2023 is going to be the year that I do that. But that's really what Quick is for, because Quick is not just a front-end runtime. It is a server-side runtime that can like dynamically serve up that JavaScript as needed. So I mean, that's like another reason that I haven't used it yet. But the ideas are really cool because like we're even further reducing the bundle size that we send to our users. We're downloading JavaScript on demand. It's pretty cool. Stencil, heard of it, not interested in learning it. Like I mentioned earlier, Lit is, I like Lit for making web components. Stencil is for making web components. Other options you use for current section not mentioned in the list above. Is there anything I use that wasn't listed? I mean, I mainly just use like Vue, Svelte, and React. So, yeah, okay. Overall happiness. On a scale of 1, very unhappy, to 5, very happy, how happy are you with the current overall state of things as it relates to the options listed above? I'm happy. So I think really like the way to answer this question is like, is there a thing in this list that brings me joy and like I have fun using when I'm building apps? And there is. Like I really like using Vue. Solid was really fun to learn just now. Svelte is fun to use. These things make me happy. there are aspects of like React and the React ecosystem that do not make me happy, which is why I don't have very happy here. I'm happy. Let's move on. All right, now we're into meta frameworks. So I've used Next.js. I would use it again. Like this is kind of like the de facto way to build React apps these days anyways. Like basically Next.js is smart enough to figure out if your app should be completely statically rendered, or if it should be single page application, or if it should be server rendered. Like it figures all of that out for you, and you don't even have to make those architecture decisions. You just write the code and it figures it out. Similarly, so does Nuxt, so does Remix, so does SvelteKit, and like Solid Start, which is why it would make sense to use these days. But a lot of times I just want to build a simple front end app, and I don't want to have to deploy it to a server. Now, with things like Versal and Netlify functions and Firebase serverless functions, it's really easy to build server functions these days. But still, I like being able to put something on a CDN and just, that's it. I don't need anything complex there. So everything's better than React these days. That's just my opinion. Like, I mean, my opinions are coming from a long history of frustration with the React community and React itself. Like SolidJS is like a breath of fresh air, because like all the weird little things about React that I didn't like, it kind of just solves that. I don't like JSX, so like I actually don't like this, but I've already come to terms with the fact that because React got so popular and so many people are familiar with using JSX, this is now the language of front-end web developers. Like this is what things are going to use. And so like if I have to use JSX, it seems more fun to me than React. So yeah. Well, and I think so. I was a big proponent of Vue, but I think people are so entrenched in the React ecosystem and so used to JSX and like how React works that it actually is a bit of a jump to get them to want to use something like Vue. Whereas I see for people that are so dead set on React, the jump seems easier to Solid, which is why I think that might actually win out. And similarly to like, instead of them jumping to Svelte, but because like React developers really like JSX and Svelte doesn't use JSX. So even though it has like really good ideas and it's like really performant, I think it's going to be harder to convince React developers to use something like Svelte. So that's my prediction, is 2023 is the year of SolidJS. Okay. Nuxt, I have used it and I would use it again. So on Friday, it's just going to be a stream where we figure out what we're going to be building for like the next 2 months. So if you tuned into Coding Garden before, we were building an app called Fresh Spots, and we just worked on that same app every Friday for like 2.5 months. This Friday, we're going to come up with another app that we're going to build, and that'll be our Friday app. And I'm thinking that we use Nuxt, because I've really been wanting to use Nuxt version 3, which is out. It's out of release candidate. It's available. It's stable. And I would really like to build an app with this. So I want I've used Nuxt 2. I used Nuxt 3 when it was in release candidate, but now I'm ready. And what's up, Conrad? I'm ready to use Nuxt 3. So that's probably what we'll choose. I think Solid Start. So Solid Start is the meta framework for Solid, the thing that we just talked about. But I think it's fairly new. Yeah, it's in beta. So I don't think we're if you tuned into the Friday streams over the past 2.5 months, we were using a framework called Fresh. And this was just a little bit too new for me. Like I got so tired and frustrated with new things, like things that they hadn't thought out yet, or that I had to figure out, or that I had to go write my own library for. So for this next app we built, I wanted to be something that is fairly stable, and Nuxt 3 seems like it's the way to go. So eventually I want to build something with Solid Start though. But yeah, okay, let's keep moving. Gatsby, I've used it and I wouldn't use it again. I think these days Astro is the thing you would use if you're trying to do what you used to do with Gatsby. For the most part, I guess they don't really have like the GraphQL data stuff that Gatsby has, but you can kind of just bring your own data solution. Yeah. And that's the thing, Clicky Poo, is like I want the project to bring me joy. Like I don't want to dread working on the thing every Friday. So, yeah. I actually have not used Remix. I'd like to learn it. I remember when Remix first came out, I was like, how is this different from Next.js? Like, why would I stop using Next and stop using this? Or and start using this? And I still don't know the answer to that, but a lot of people have talked about Remix and like I think one of the things that might do really well is routing. I think people like the routing and nested routing in Remix versus in Next.js. So I do want to learn it. I know that it's like it's a thing. It potentially has potential. It potentially has potential. It has potential to be the de facto thing, whereas Next is currently the de facto thing in the React world. No, I don't know how that's going to go because like Next.js is backed by Vercel, and a lot of people deploy their like it's fine tuned to work with Next apps. I don't know if Remix has a similar thing. So data mutations are easier. That's cool. Data loading is where it shines. Okay, yeah. So I'll have to try it at some point. I haven't tried it yet, but I would like to learn it. All right, Astro. I've used it and I'd use it again. I did a stream where we built the same static site in multiple different ways, and then we tried out Astro for the first time. It's gosh darn amazing. What was amazing was the website that Astro generated was the exact same website that we wrote by hand at first. So we had a 3-page website, and the first way we built it was just we literally coded each HTML file. We did it by hand, and we wrote all of that code, and then we also built it with I guess React. We did it server side rendered with like Express and I forget the templating language we used. And then we did it with Astro, but the code that Astro generated was the actual exact code that we wrote when we did it as a static website. But the code we wrote with Astro, I think, was just like React components, which was pretty cool. Levity, it sounds familiar, but I'm gonna say I haven't heard of it. Don't know what it is. Let's look it up. Actually, I'm not gonna change my answer, but we are gonna look it up. Levity Milano? Well, oh wait. This link was gray, so I have clicked on this before. Wow, somebody I've heard of it. Okay, I've heard of it, but I'm not interested in it. I'm gonna keep it as I haven't heard of it. I'm not sure what it is because I didn't even remember it. I think somebody maybe asked me about it in stream, and I was like, I have no idea what this is. But honestly, it looks like it's kind of like Astro. It's a static site thing. Like you have a simple markdown file, and then you generate the website, and it does it. So, yeah, seems cool. SvelteKit, I have heard of it, and I've used it, and I would use it again. And actually, yeah, Coding Garden, the Coding Garden website is built with SvelteKit, and I'm using the adapter static, so the entire website is half a single page application. So you can see like when I click here, it's like an instant page load because that's a single page application. But also when it generated the website, this page got generated as its own page separately. So there's no server runtime. It's all just static files. But it generated it in a pretty cool way. So I've used SvelteKit for that, and I was using it for some other things that I was working on too. I've heard of Docosaurus. I've heard of it, and I would not like to learn it. So I don't think there's an option for that. I have not heard of it, and I guess I'm not interested in it. Yeah, that makes sense. That one. Any other options here? I don't think so. Overall happiness, I'm neutral. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I don't use a lot of these meta frameworks. I typically just focus on like completely front-end stuff that can be hosted on a static server. Like I said earlier, 2023 is going to be the year where I do more hybrid server rendered stuff. Okay, testing. I've used Jess, and I probably won't use it again now that VTest is a thing. So VTest is fast. It has a Jest compatible API. Same thing with Mocha. Like, if you want to use the, well, no, I guess Mocha is just the test runner. Chai would be the expectations, but you can have Chai style expectations with VTest. VTest is the future. I've used Storybook. I would probably use it again. I don't know of any good alternatives to Storybook, but I don't like how manual it is to create Storybook things. It requires a lot of code instead of just like dynamically figuring out where my components are to generate it. It's cumbersome. That's the word I have for Storybook. The Style Guidist is the one that I've used that I really like because you don't have to add a lot of extra stuff. You just add a JSX section and it automatically pulls that out into documentation. If there were a way to do that with Storybook, I'd be a lot happier. Cypress, I've used it. I would use it again. This is end-to-end testing. There's that new one from that small company, Microsoft. What's it called? Whatever it is. It's like a replacement for Cypress in terms of running end-to-end tests. Ava, I have heard of it. Yeah, that small Playwright. That's the one. That small indie company. Playwright is the one. It kind of seems like Playwright it would be the replacement for Cypress, but I don't know. Competition is good, and Microsoft doesn't need to own everything, so I'll probably keep using Cypress. Ava is a test runner. Oh, I see. Heard of it, not interested. I thought this was not heard of it. So I've heard of Ava, not interested, really just because I use VTest, but Ava was cool when it came out because it was all about running your tests in parallel. Yeah, this logo. Look at that. Minimal and fast, simple test syntax. What was this the other one where, yeah, so I liked, this was one of the first test runners where instead of having just like, at least for one of the first that I saw, instead of having magic describe and it variables, you literally just import it from Ava, which was pretty cool. I think you can do it in a similar way with like describe and it, but to me it was cool to see that like you just actually import the things. So heard of it, but also not interested because again, like VTest seems like the way to go for everything. So Jasmine used it, wouldn't use it again. Jasmine is typically what you use to test Angular apps, but yeah. Puppeteer, I've never used Puppeteer for testing, but I have used it for like browser automation. So yeah, I'd use it again. Testing library, used it and would use it again. Typically, I would use testing library in conjunction with VTest. I've heard of Playwright, not interested. Like I said, we'll use Cypress. And what's up, Stack the Pile? Welcome in. Playwright is ridiculously faster than Cypress. Good to hear. I don't know. Competition is good. Like Microsoft owns GitHub. They own VS Code. What else do they own? like you could be an open source developer and you're still using. Do they own npm too? But I think that's the crazy thing is like you want to be like a developer in the open source world, and now you're using all of this proprietary technology from Microsoft. I guess not all of it's proprietary though. A lot of it is open source, but I don't know. GitHub bought npm. Oh my goodness. LinkedIn, Skype, GitHub. Wait, Microsoft owns LinkedIn? All right. Okay, maybe I would like to learn Playwright. That's what I'm gonna do. WebDriver, I've heard of it, but I'm not interested. I do believe, like, does Cypress use WebDriver under the hood? And also, okay, now we're at VTest. It's awesome. I'd use it. I would use it again. I've used Selenium a long time ago, but I think these days there are better options than Selenium. Test Cafe, never heard of it. Cool. Overall happiness. I'm a genuinely happy person. I got enough sleep last night. I'm happy. All right, mobile and desktop. Electron. I would use it, and I would use it again. Look at me. This is an Electron app. and it was really easy to build because I already know web technologies, and it was really easy to make it transparent, which is a bit harder to do with other desktop development frameworks. I've used React Native. I mean, I think if I were building a native app and I needed real native features, I probably would pick React Native just because of the ecosystem and everything. But I would also consider Flutter. Yeah, so I probably would use React Native. It just seems like it's the best in that class of things. Like your other options are like native script, which seems fine. Don't know. Native apps. Does this just mean like an iOS app? Does this just mean Android apps? Because I've built Android apps, I've built iOS apps. Like, this isn't like some JavaScript framework, is it? Yeah, I'll build native apps if the situation arises where I would need to. Cordova. These days, so if you're building hybrid mobile web applications, yeah, I think that's what they mean by native apps, like Kotlin for Android apps, Swift for iOS apps, Swift for Mac apps, C# for Windows apps. Yeah, native OS apps. Yeah, sure. Cordova is a thing you can use whenever you're building hybrid mobile apps. So if you're building a mobile app that's hosting a web view, and that web view wants to communicate with native device features, Cordova is a way to do that. But the new way to do it is with Capacitor.js. From the same team that brought you Ionic. But you can use Capacitor without Ionic. So my answer for this one is I wouldn't use Cordova again because I would just use Capacitor. That said, there are a couple of things that don't exist as Capacitor plugins where you might actually need to use Cordova plugins. So I'm changing my answer to I would use it again because I was recently looking into I was looking into building a hybrid mobile app, and I wanted to have background functionality. Like I need it to always be running in the background. And the latest version of Capacitor got rid of that plugin. And I think one of the only ways to do it is with the Cordova plugin or writing your own plugin. Ionic, honestly, I don't think I would use it again. So I had a really bad experience with Ionic just because of their component framework. I just really did not jive with. I don't know. Wait, just let me look at the website. Why are you going to ask me to sign up? Oh, when you click getting started, that asks you to sign up. That's weird. That should take me to the guide. I think I might have used version 5. I don't know if things have changed, but when I used Ionic to build a mobile app, I was using React. And the thing is, all of the components were actually written as web components. So Ionic wrote web components, and then they wrote a bridge for all of those web components to work with all of these other frameworks like Angular, React, and Vue, and everything else. But the issue with that is the React components didn't expose the API that I would have liked. Like things were missing, or things didn't work the way that I would expect in React because they were actually web components. So that's what I really didn't like about Ionic. What is cool, though, about Ionic is that it will automatically style it depending on where you deploy it to. So, for instance, let's look at a button. A button. You can see that when you run your Ionic app on iOS, it's going to look like an iOS button. And then when you run your Ionic app on Android, it's going to look like Material Design. So that's one of the cool things about their component library. I really wish there was like a component library that had these stylings but wasn't tied to like Ionic components. So yeah. Okay, let's keep moving. Capacitor, would use it again. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like the new replacement for Cordova. NWJS, heard of it, not interested, honestly. Like Electron. So NWJS is a competitor to Electron. And I would just choose Electron just because I'm familiar with it. I know it's potentially faster, potentially has some better APIs, but I'm just familiar with Electron, so I'll keep using it. Expo is what gets tied to React Native. And that's part of the ecosystem I was talking about that's like really nice for React Native apps. Quasar, is kind of like your other like if you don't want to use Ionic, Quasar would be the way to go because they also do hybrid mobile, but they also allow you to take that same app and run it as an Electron app or run it as a progressive web app. Nice job. So Quasar is cool. I've really only used the component feature of it, but it would be cool to build a completely cross-platform app with it. Yeah. So there's Tari. You're not going to like my answer. I've heard of it and I'm not interested. So I did a stream where I tried it out. And one of the things I didn't like about Tari is that doing native things requires me to learn an entirely new API. So I was trying to read and write a file to the file system, and I'm technically writing JavaScript code, but it's JavaScript code that's bridged to like native Rust code. And I was just banging my head against the wall trying to figure out like what are the right permissions I needed to request. And like my whole deal was, if I want to do these things and I want to use JavaScript, I want to use the API that I already know. Like I want to use the node.js file system API or the Dino file system API. I don't want to have to learn an entirely new API. And then one of the benefits that Tari gives you is that instead of running an entire Chromium instance for every single one of your apps, and thank you, Limotes, I appreciate that. But with Electron, every single Electron app is running its own instance of Chromium. And that's why it uses so much memory, and that's why a lot of people don't like it. But Tari doesn't. It uses the system web view, and there are frameworks that work that way for web stuff. Neutralino, I think, is probably it. Yeah, so this is like Electron, but instead of embedding Chromium, it uses the system web view. In Electron and NWJS, you have to install Node and hundreds of dependencies, embedded Chromium, make apps bloaty. Neutralino doesn't bundle Chromium and uses the existing web browser library. So like Neutralino, you can still use Node and everything you know about Node, but instead of bundling Chromium, it just uses the system web view. So that's what I would use. NativeScript, I've heard of it. I would like to learn. I've never actually built anything with NativeScript, but it would be cool to see how it compares to React Native. Cool. Overall, neutral. I don't do a lot of mobile and desktop. So yeah, not happy one way or the other. All right, build tools. Webpack. I've used it and I'm not going to use it again. Like now having Vite, like Vite is the future. Like obviously it's going to cause Webpack to continue to innovate. So a couple of years ago when Parcel came out, like the zero config thing that Parcel could do was kind of amazing. And then Webpack came out with, I think, version 4. Was it 3 or 4 that was zero config? And that was awesome. And so like then it became, okay, you can use Webpack and you don't have to come up with all this configuration anymore. But still, if you wanted to do more custom things, there was still quite a bit of configuration that needed to happen. And then ESBuild came along and just beat them all out. So it's faster than Parcel and Rollup and Webpack. And ESBuild is what Vite uses under the hood. So like, yeah, that's the thing. So yeah, I don't think I'll ever purposefully choose to use Webpack. Similarly with Parcel, like for me, all of these things is just like use Vite. And Vite technically integrates and uses rollup plugins, so I still would use rollup plugins. Gulp is the old thing. Nice. Gulp is the wasn't Gulp before Grunt? No, Grunt came first. Which one was configuration based? But these are like older bundling tools that you don't really use anymore because of the newer stuff. Like I mentioned, Parcel is like zero config. Rollup is still relevant because you can use rollup plugins with Vite. Browserify isn't really relevant anymore. You have all of the other ways of pulling in and doing requires and import stuff in the browser. Gulp was piping, Grunt was more config. Okay, that makes sense then. So yeah, Gulp came after Grunt. But I remember, yeah, when Gulp came out, everyone was all about it. Just like, oh yeah, You don't have to have like a gigantic messy config anymore. You can actually write JavaScript code that is your build process. But yeah, and not to knock on anyone that's still using these things. I think if you start a new project, you probably wouldn't choose one of these things because there are better options. That's really all that I'm saying. But there's a lot of legacy projects out there or projects started a year or two ago where it still makes sense to use these things. If it uses rollup when building and ES build when in dev mode, I thought it used a combination of both. What's the current best practice to use node libraries in a browser environment? You don't. So if something is meant to run inside of Node, there are technically like polyfills that you could pull in, but you typically wouldn't want to do that. What I was mentioning is like the replacement for Browserify is just the fact that people publish their modules now as ECMAScript modules or as CommonJS modules, and then the build tools that we're using that use like Babel or like the TypeScript compiler, they already know how to pull those packages in. So I guess the answer is, like let's say you're using Vite to create a React app, and you need to install something from npm and import it in. You just do it. Like you type import, you put the name of the thing you installed, and it kind of just works. There's no like extra process there, and it's hidden how it handles that in their build process. I guess. Am I answering your question? But like there are node libraries that like you shouldn't use in the web browser. But there are libraries that were written in CommonJS format that you might want to use in the web browser that don't do anything native or node specific that you can use just by importing them in like a modern project that has like build tools set up. Does that make sense? Let's keep moving. TypeScript CLI, I use it. Rome, never heard of it. Don't know what it is. Snowpack, heard of it. Not interested. I think again like Vite is kind of like winning out over all of this. SWC, I believe, is what Next.js uses under the hood. This could be the chicken tender, the contender that puts up a fight against Vite. It's a Rust-based platform for the web. So in 2023, so a speedy web compiler, I do believe this is what Next.js uses under the hood. This could be the thing that outpaces Vite or ESBuild. But yeah, I've used ESBuild indirectly, like with Vite, so I'll just say that I use it. And again, I've been talking about Vite this whole time. Like Vite is the thing that everything is using. I don't know what WMR is. TurboPack, I guess, is also the thing. Does that use SWC under the hood? Is that the thing that came from Next? I'm just gonna say, heard of it, not interested. But I think like this, if TurboPack doesn't use SWC under the hood, then either of those are like real contenders for 2023. I'm happy. Let's keep going. All right, I don't do a lot of Monorepo stuff. I have in the past, but haven't used Rushed. I've heard of TurboRepo, and I would like to learn it. I think TurboRepo is the new thing that everyone's choosing. From the makers of TurboPack, we give you TurboRepo. I used Lerna for a Monorepo project that I was working on a while back. That's my experience with it. Haven't used Yarn Workspaces. Haven't used... Oh, wait, no. I've heard of Yarn Workspaces. I haven't heard of Yalk. I've used Lerna. Probably wouldn't use it again because I think TurboRepo is the way to go. A Monorepo is a repo that has multiple projects inside of it. And it makes it a whole lot easier to share resources between those projects. So one thing you could do is you could have a Monorepo that has your front-end code base and your back-end code base as two separate projects, and then a shared code base that has like TypeScript interfaces. But the Monorepo tools would let you very easily import those shared TypeScript definitions to the two projects. Without having to do anything weird like publishing one of them to npm and like trying to install and import that. Basically, it's all of your packages living together. An example of this is just like look at the source code of Vue.js. So if we look at Vue on GitHub, Vue. If we look at Vue and then we look at this packages directory, This is a monorepo that has these 3 different packages. It used to be a lot more, but now it's just these 3. If you look at the React repo, same thing. It too is a monorepo. It has this packages directory, and then there's React Clash, React Client, React DevTools, React DOM. All of these are separate projects, all in this one repo. So it makes it really easy to collaborate and share code between projects without having to keep them all in one project. And each one of these folders gets its own package.json, its own list of dependencies, and then the monorepo tool that you're using will have a way of sharing dependencies between projects as well. Everyone's really liking the drop game. So like if 2 of these things depend on the same thing, you potentially could have a package JSON at the root of the project where the dependencies are shared between the other 2. So yeah, haven't used Yarn workspaces. Never heard of Yalk. I've used Lerna, wouldn't use it. I would try to learn Turbo Repo. I've heard of npm workspaces, but I think Turbo Repo seems like the way to go. PNPM is great. If you haven't heard of PNPM, it basically, you can just replace npm with it, but instead of copying and downloading your dependencies into every single JavaScript project, it puts them in a shared location on your drive and then just adds a symlink, which makes your npm installs really fast. And it makes a whole lot of sense instead of copying them everywhere. So it's cool. NX, heard of it, not interested. I think that's what Steve Whitman mentioned. I think this is another monorepo tool. NX, smart, fast, and extensible build system with first-class monorepo support. Interesting. Yeah, okay, I'm going to say I've never heard of it because I don't even know what that was. All right, I'm happy. All right, let's go to other tools. Which libraries do I regularly use? Zod. That is it. So Eimer is an immutable data library. Lodash and underscore are like array and object utilities. Ramda is a functional programming library. jQuery is like DOM utilities. RxJS is like functional streams for data. That's typically used a lot in Angular. Never heard of standard lib, but is this just like the missing standard library for JavaScript? So ever since I started using Zod on Fresh Spots, I have not stopped using it. So like any other project that's like TypeScript, I'm pretty much using Zod in it. You've got math functions, probability functions. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I don't use it though. Partytown sounds familiar. What does it do? A lazy loaded library to help relocate resource-intensive scripts into a web worker. Never heard of it. Never heard of mitosis either. Date management, typically I always just reach for date functions. I've used Luxon every now and then. Luxon is the modern successor to Moment.js. Data visualization. Did I even do any data visualization this past year? I don't think I did. Let's look up mitosis. BMind says it's rad. Write components once, run anywhere. Oh. Compiles to Vue, React, Solid, Angular, Svelte, and more. No way! That's pretty cool. So I guess this is used a lot in like micro front ends, stuff like that. Seems cool. I'm just gonna say D3 because like I would use D3, and then of all the charting libraries, Chart.js is one that I've used a lot and seems to be the one that I always reach for. It's like the easiest to use. It's cool. Okay, graphics and animations. Sure, 3JS. I don't do a lot of animation stuff, so. What is? Check the ones that you use regularly. Okay, so I don't technically use TRPC regularly, but it is something that I have been reaching for. I do use Axios regularly. Let's go ahead and say I use React Query regularly because any larger React app, I will reach for React Query. I just don't do a lot of animations. Yeah, so the Greenstock animation project is something that you could use for that, but I just don't. I do like CSS animations. That's about it. Yeah. Backend frameworks. Yes, Express. I want to try Nest, but I don't use it regularly. Have I been missing the show more button on any of these? I haven't. That's it. Honestly, I probably should be using more Fastify. Yeah. Other Feathers.js. And Feathers version 5 is going to be coming out sometime in January. We're actually going to have the creator and maintainer on the stream again, like we did for the last launch. But Feathers v5 is exciting because it's going to give TRPC a run for its money. They have this concept called schemas that give you basically front end to back end type safety, but I would argue they do it in a more agnostic way than TRPC, because TRPC is like very TypeScript focused. With Feathers, you're using what's that library called? Typebox, which generates JSON schemas, and then those JSON schemas could potentially be consumed by front ends that aren't written in JavaScript. But yeah, Feathers 5 is going to be great. Oh yeah, what's up, CM Griffin? Mitosis is awesome. I had the maintainer on my stream at one point. Be happy to introduce you if that's something you want to explore. Oh yeah, I'll let you know. I might just want to try it out before that. But shouts out to our friend CM Griffin. Hopefully you're doing all right. Soap and WSDLs all over again. The thing is, like, you need a standardized way to describe an API that can be consumed by clients of various languages. Yeah, you're welcome, of course, CM Griffin. So yeah, all right, but yeah, I don't use any of these other things. If I want to talk about things that I want to use, probably Fastify. I want to try Nest. I'm like, I used to say that I would never try Nest.js, but in my old age, as I get older, the more and more I realize we need developers need structure. Developers need guardrails. And it just makes for a more maintainable code base, because like you could make the argument that like, all right, just write good code, just organize your code well. But people that haven't been exposed to well organized code are not very good at organizing code. So that's why I'm more and more I'm talking about like use Angular because it helps you organize your code, or use Nest because it helps you organize your code. Like freedom is nice, but in larger projects with larger teams, opinions and organization, I think, makes a lot of sense, because otherwise it's like the Wild West. It's like the Wild West. The Alt F4 stream is using Nest. That's great. Cool. And Fagwena is saying Nest has strong Angular vibes. Yeah, and that's the vibe that I get as well. And I mean, further than that, it has strong enterprise Java vibes. Which, honestly, the more I think about it, is actually a good thing, because it forces people to like organize their code. But yeah, okay. Also, Redwood is something that I would want to check out. I've only like looked at their docs. I've never actually used it. Cool. Which utilities or tools do I regularly use? I use Node Version Manager, and that's it. What engines do I regularly use? Browser, Node, and Dino. Which edge or serverless runtimes do you regularly use? Wait, is this Versal? Why is it called Next.js Edge Runtime? I'm just going to type Versal. Cool. I use TypeScript. That's about it. Non-JavaScript languages. Which other programming languages do I use? I used some C# this year. That's about it. Okay, let's go to usage. Here we go. How do you divide your time between JavaScript and TypeScript code? These days, it's probably more like this. I still write a lot of JavaScript, but like more of it is TypeScript. I use it professionally. I use it for front end and back end, and data analysis, and desktop apps, and mobile apps. I've made some games. I've visualized data. Sure. I'm in the education sector and programming and technical tools sector. I'm also in entertainment. Coding Garden is entertainment, right? Are you not entertained? Yeah, those are all my industries. Application patterns. Okay. Let's talk about this for a little bit because this is what I was talking about earlier. I mostly just build single page applications. I really like if I can, I want to build a thing that doesn't require a backend. Now, obviously, the moment you need user login and data and a database and all that, you need a backend, but that's not always the case for everything that you're building. So most of the stuff I build are single page applications. Now, apps that run entirely on the server with minimal client-side dynamic behavior, I don't really build a lot of those. That's more so like server-side rendered apps. I've built those in the past, but in the past year, haven't really built those at all. Static site generation, pre-rendered static content with or without a client dynamic element. I also haven't done a lot of that. Server-side rendering, dynamic rendering HTML content on the server before rehydrating it on the client. I don't like their separation of this because the way they described a multi-page application, I would describe as a server-side rendered application because server-side render isn't also synonymous with hydrating on the client. Typically, if you're building a server-side rendered app, like when I hear server-side render, I mean I think of like handlebars and an Express app, and there's not really a built-in mechanism for doing hydrating on the client. It's all like server-side rendered. So these two are a little bit confusing. I know there are people writing technical documents and stuff. Yeah, and I think that's where they're going with that, Ghost Comrade, is like Next.js or Remix. That's kind of when we say SSR there, that's what we mean in the Next.js world is like rehydrating on the client, but that's not always what it means. So yeah, that's a thing. Only hydrating some of your components on the client. React server components, no. So yeah, I have done Next.js. I have done Nuxt in the past year. Controlling the order of component hydration on the client. Progressive enhancement, making sure an app is functional even without JavaScript. Sure. Islands architecture. Sure, we were using Dino. I guess using Dino will classify as there. Incremental static generation, being able to dynamically augment or modify a static site even after the initial build. Break down server rendered content into smaller, and actually I didn't even think about this, but coding.garden actually is statically generated. This is all static files that got generated there. Cool, and all this other stuff I haven't really used as well. So let's keep going. Opinions. JavaScript is moving in the right direction. Yeah, I guess so. JavaScript is moving in the right direction. Do I agree with that? Yeah, it's only getting better. Yeah, it's only getting better. Building JavaScript apps is overly complex right now. Yeah, I agree strongly. I think people are reaching for the wrong tools more often than not. In that they're reaching for more complex tools when they actually could be using things that are much simpler. So I do agree with that sentiment. Yeah. And it also is, like, in a way, it kind of, like, gatekeeps because people start doing things that way, and then when someone new tries to come into the field, they try to convince them that this is, like, the only way to do things, and then it just scares them off from even being a web dev because they're like, oh, I don't want to deal with all of that. So, yeah, I agree. It's overly complex. The JavaScript ecosystem is changing too fast. No, I don't think, like, I think it has to change. Like, without progress, like, things get boring and stagnant. So I think it's not moving too fast. Yeah, Nest is pretty cool. JavaScript pain points. Pick the top 3 aspects of JavaScript you struggle with the most. I don't like, okay, so the way to approach this is like, do I know of a good solution for doing these things? And do I often run into this issue? So for state management, I don't think so, because like if I know how to do it in React, I know how to do it in Vue, it's not something that I struggle with. So yeah, that's not a pain point. Code architecture. It's not something I personally struggle with, but in working with other developers that aren't as familiar with organizing and structuring their code base, that is the point that I was making earlier about like how Angular is so opinionated and how Nest.js is so opinionated, like it forces people to organize and maintain their code in a way that other things don't. So, yeah. Finding and evaluating JavaScript packages, no, that's fine. Debugging, that's fine. Managing dependencies, that's fine. Handling async functions, that's fine. Writing JavaScript modules, that's fine. Handling and manipulating dates and times, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's like I choose a library for that, like date functions. So, yeah. What do you feel is currently missing from JavaScript? It's not missing static typing. Stop trying to make static typing happen. Like, JavaScript is the way it is. You can add static typing as a build tool, but don't force me to use types. I don't think we need a standard library. We definitely don't need the pipe operator. All the functional programmers are gonna want the pipe operator. I definitely don't like decorators. Immutable data structures could be cool. Let's go with that. What do you feel is currently missing from JavaScript? The thing is, like, the temporal and observable or like proxies already exist. They're not missing. Better date management? Yeah, I guess so. So yeah, I would argue that even the new temporal API is missing things. Like, I don't think it even has a format function, does it? But I want to be able to take a date object and say format and say that I want like month, day, year, that kind of thing. That doesn't, I don't think that exists in the temporal API. So I would argue we need better date management. Okay, let's keep going. How happy are you with the general state of web technologies? It's fine. I'm happy. General state of JavaScript, I'm fine. All right, let's keep going. First learning methods. When first starting out, how did you initially learn coding? Self-directed learning. On-the-job training. School and higher education. That's about it. Yeah, so I have never liked books. My first dev job, I got a bunch of books because the company paid for them, but like I never read them. I got like the design patterns book, and I'm probably the only one that I actually read was Pragmatic Programmer. But yeah, I mean, and I got a giant book on .NET and a giant book on like WPF, but I maybe looked at them 2 or 3 times. Everything else I just found in online resources. I have never really taken course. It's really weird because like I'm working on my own courses and I'm producing video content right now. Like you're watching me, but I personally don't really learn that way. I don't learn from courses or anything like that. And I did get a computer science degree. So, what blogs and magazines do I read? I guess dev.to every now and then, though. So yeah, I kind of read dev.to because I posted on there. I've looked at best of JS. Is good. It's not a. Is it a blog too? I know bestofjs.org. Yeah, I think this is what they're talking about, and we've looked at this quite a lot on stream. So yeah, we'll check that one. I've looked at JavaScript Weekly every now and then, but I don't look at it constantly. Definitely CSS tricks. That's about it. All right, sites and courses. I consult Stack Overflow, MDN. Never use web.dev. Yeah, that's it. All right, other sites and courses. This is the point. So if you're taking this survey, consider checking Coding Garden on here because I made it on the list. I think that, so regardless of what rank I get in here, if I'm in the results of the State of JS survey, so many more people look at the results than actually take the survey. So this actually will be really good, really good advertisement for the Coding Garden channel. Kinsey Dodds and Epic React are the same. Oh, and this previous one? I think Epic React has more people behind it than just Kinsey Dodds. There's some courses that are like, actually, there are courses on Egghead.io that are from Kinsey Dodds, and I think Epic React has like a whole team behind it. I don't know. Creators I follow on video-centric platforms. I follow Fireship. I watched his most recent video last night. It was really entertaining, about basically like what happened in 2022 and what's to come. Things are gonna get weird in 2023. So definitely watch that if you haven't. It was a fun watch. Coding Train is on here, I do believe. Yeah, there he is. Boom. So I mean, we can actually look at my subscriptions, but I am subscribed to Kevin Powell as well. Channels. I thought I was. These are not. I have more subscriptions than this. Where did all of that go? But yeah, the CSS guy. He used to stream on Twitch. I don't know if he does anymore. Let's see. Brad Traversy, of course. I keep an eye on Web Dev Simplified. I think like most of the stuff he publishes is pretty beginner focused, but I honestly, I use it as inspiration for things that I might talk about or that I might teach from for beginners. So that is it. That's it. So I'll check Me Do Dev because I follow him over here on Twitch. I think he rated us one time. But he streams in Spanish. He like in the Spanish speaking world, he's one of the biggest creators for sure. Cool. Okay, I'll check myself. Why not? Like I gotta do something. I'll also add in here Trash Dev. I tune into his stream every now and then. Mewtrue. Who else do I watch on Twitch? CM Griffin. Who else? Can look at. I guess can I look at my follow list? I don't know. Yeah, so like I follow both the Primogen and Theo. I don't really watch them that much though. I think it's like it's the cool thing to like if you're following tech people on Twitch, you have to be following Theo and the Primogen. But that doesn't mean actually watch them. Yeah, I'll add C# Fritch here too. And it's no dig on them, right? It's just like they're not my cup of tea. And like we've been rated by the Primogen. We've rated them. Like we're still amicable, but I just don't watch it. I mean, I'll check it because honestly, if he's the only one streaming, I will put him on in the background. I'll say that. All right. What programming related podcast do I listen to? Syntax is the only one that I'm subscribed to. I used to listen to JavaScript Jabber a ton. So I used to when I had like a 20 to 30 minute commute, I would listen to like every episode of JavaScript Jabber, but I don't have a commute anymore. I don't really find the time to listen to any of these podcasts. I also I don't really listen to Syntax that much. But I still subscribe to like if you look at my podcast list, it's still on there. So we'll check it. People you read, follow, or just want to highlight for their work. No. What other surveys do I participate in? I actually have. This is one of the first surveys I've participated in. So that's the thing. All right. About me. How old am I? I'm not going to answer this on stream. How many years of experience do I have? 11 to 20 years. Company size? It's just right now. It's my. It's just me. It's Coding Garden is just me. My yearly salary right now. Let's do the math. Right. So, I have 313 subscribers, and honestly, it's not. I don't think it's fair to answer in this survey how much I make because it's gonna skew. It's gonna think that that's my salary, but it's like I'm figuring things out. I'm gonna put I work for free because right now, 313 subs, roughly $2.50 each. I am making $782 a month on Twitch. Plus, right now I'm making, I think about $89 a month on Patreon. So there's $89. And what's up, Mr. Demon Wolf? What do you mean? What about YouTube? Like creators that I watch on? Oh, what do I make on YouTube? Yeah, we'll answer that next. And then right now, I make $40 a month on YouTube, so I don't have ads enabled on YouTube, and also like I don't do things that a YouTube channel should to get more views and to make more revenue. Like the traditional playbook for making a YouTube channel is you make short consumable videos where you get outside sponsors that pay you either per view or per video that you do. And you try to drive as many views as possible to those videos so that you get advertising revenue. I do none of that. And it's just my own personal thing. My current estimated revenue over the past 28 days on YouTube is $68. Yeah, so I think there are like 1 or 2 videos that are consistently getting views, so I left ads enabled on them. Other than that, I disabled ads on almost every video, mainly because they don't really get that many views. Like, I'm not doing clickbait type content or easily consumable content. Like the videos that I've published since I started doing this full time are the setting up a Mac for web development. Like this was like a 5-hour stream that I edited down to like an hour and a half. It's gotten 75,000 views, but that's over the past 4 months. It's not like I got all of those 75,000 views at once. This is this video right here is a resource that people will continue to use for the next like 2 to 3 years, or like probably like the next 2 years. Because if you look at my last setting up a Mac for web development video, it is one of the most popular videos on my channel of all time. Look at that, 221,000 views, but it was published 2 years ago. So like over time it gets more views, but it's not like a video drops and then I get a bunch of money. I could buy your whole family for this amount of money. So $68 per month, let's say that. So we've got Twitch revenue, Patreon revenue. What was this, 40? Oh, I guesstimated. And then $68 from YouTube. So my monthly income is $939. And if you want to multiply that whole thing by 12, that means before tax, my salary would be $11,000 a year. It is. I'm not going to put that because that would make it seem like I'm a developer that makes very little money. We're rich. What's up, Latte the Dev? But all that to say, like what I hope. So like let's do the numbers for, so like this is how much I'm making right now, right? And really this pays half of my rent. I have a wife. She pays the other half. She also pays for food and living expenses and stuff like that. And I have some savings. So right now I'm not really like making any money. But let's say I launch a course and I sell it for $10 a piece. And let's say there are 500 people that buy that course. That would be my month. And if I get 500 people to buy the course per month, and then I do this, that's about 75. Like that's respectable, right? I can live off of that. So that's the goal, is that like I sell a certain number of courses per month. And that'll make my money. Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right, Jan, is like I can mess around with the pricing too. And that's kind of what I want to do, because like for a student, I want to charge $1. Or like $5. I don't know. Yeah, I want to make it affordable. But then if somebody currently has a job and like they're using their company's I forget the names that they call it, but a lot of companies, like personal improvement plans or whatever, like the companies will pay for their employees to like take online courses or go to conferences. And if that's the case, then I could charge $100 for those people. And let's say there's like, I don't know, 50 of those people that pay $100 for the course. And then 300 people that pay $5 for the course. And then maybe there's someone in between that like they're employed, but they're paying for it themselves. And maybe we charge them $30 and maybe there's 100 of them. I can make more money that way. So this piece right here is the one that's missing because I haven't launched a course yet. But ideally, once that piece is there, then I will be making some actual money. But in the meantime, I'm just going to say that I work for free. Yes, I have a degree in computer science. I am in the United States. I am a man. That's my gender. Ethnicity. I am actually Hispanic. Like, I don't speak Spanish, and I don't have a lot of ties to my Hispanic heritage, but I on my mother's side, she is Mexican. I do not have any disabilities. How did I find out about this survey? Reviewed results from 2021 2020 survey. How could we improve this survey? I don't have it. I gotta go. Do I want to be notified when the survey results are released? Yeah, let me know. That's my email. All right, I'm gonna put my age in and then complete finish survey. Here we go. Wowie! You got the same score, Codex? Nice. So I've heard or used 33 out of 35 features mentioned in the survey, which puts me in the top 100% of all respondents. This can't be right. That means every respondent heard or used 33. This is not right, right? That stat is wrong. Yeah, this stat is wrong, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm sure they'll figure it out. You didn't think I would do it, Timon? I've heard of a lot of stuff, and a lot of the stuff I proved that I knew what the stuff was before looking. Yeah, I guess we're technically always in the top percent. Out of all the respondents, you're definitely one of them. That's another thing that the State of JS survey helps me with, is like figuring out the things that I want to learn. So like learning more about animations, using more of the like meta frameworks and stuff like that. Yeah. This was fun. What will also be fun is reviewing the results. So whenever the results come out, we'll do another stream where we look through the results and then also try some things that we haven't tried before. So like maybe we'll try Fastify, or maybe we'll try Solid Start, stuff like that. I don't know. This was great. Tune in Friday. It's going to be a chill stream because we will be figuring out what we're going to be building for like the next 2 months. So if you tune into Coding Garden before, every Friday we were working on the exact same project. We're going to try to do a similar thing, but we need to come up with what we're going to build. So if you check out the calendar, you can see when I go live. You can add it to your calendar. I also have a mailing list. I send out a notification every time I go live. And then we also have a Discord. I notify people there, so you can join that. That's it. That's all. Let's go on a raid. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. This was super fun.